Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something truly fascinating. We're going to map out the invisible truths of existence, the nature of the divine, and the incredibly complex mechanics of human free will. And the best part? We're exploring source material that breaks all this down using some absolutely brilliant everyday metaphors. So let's just jump right in.
So let's kick things off with a direct question. Can a finite mind actually grasp the infinite? Really think about that for a second. Can a mind that's totally bound by time, space, and physical limits comprehend an entity that has literally none of those restrictions? Well, according to the framework we're looking at today, the answer is a hard no. Trying to completely picture the absolute essence of God, it's just an impossible task for us. The source brings in this beautiful poetic metaphor by Ziya Pasha to explain this. It basically translates to, comprehending the highest truths is not for this small mind, for this scale cannot bear such a heavy weight. It's the metaphor of a broken scale. Think about taking an infinite, immeasurable mass and just dropping it onto a tiny little scale made for measuring everyday objects. You don't get a reading. The scale just breaks. And human cognition, that's our finite scale. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. To even begin to understand the infinite, we've got to first recognize the absolute smallness of our own scale. We can't comprehend God's pure essence, what's called the Zat, directly. Instead, the only way we can start to know the divine is by fully owning our own utter limitations. Recognizing just how small we are is the very first step to perceiving that greatness.
Section 1. The degrees of existence.
All right, so this source categorizes reality into 3 degrees of existence. First up, we've got vasibul wujud, or necessary existence. This is God. This existence is absolute. It owes its being to nothing else, and its non-existence is totally unthinkable. Second is mumkin ul wujud, or possible existence. That's us. It's the universe, the planets, literally everything else. We only exist because we were willed into the realm of possibility by the necessary existence. We have a start date, and we could just as easily not exist. And third, muhail wujud, impossible existence, which is just absolute pure nothingness. Which is kind of funny because, as the text points out, even thinking about pure nothingness requires a mind that already exists. Section 2. The forms of reality.
Now, how do we actually perceive these degrees of existence in our daily lives? The source uses this incredible comparison with a simple glass of water. You've got universal reality, which is both physical and mental. The physical reality is the actual liquid in the glass. The mental reality is that universal image of water in your head, though obviously just thinking about water isn't going to quench your thirst. Both of these are universal. They don't change whether you're in the East or the West. But then you have linguistic reality, and this absolutely changes. An English speaker says water, a Turkish speaker says su, an Arab says ma, a Persian says ab. The linguistic label is always shifting, but the core reality, that stays exactly the same. So let's apply that water analogy directly to the divine. If the word water instantly pops an image of a clear, refreshing liquid into your mind, what comes to mind when you say the word Allah? Remember, we already established that our finite minds can't picture the infinite essence. So the mind needs something else to hold on to, right? It needs attributes. And that's exactly where we get the concept of the Esma-ul Husna, which translates to the beautiful names or perfect attributes of God. Since we can't picture the absolute essence of God, these names give us a necessary mental framework. The source beautifully describes them as a ladder extended from the heavens, just to help our human minds climb up and conceptualize the divine. Names like the merciful, the knowing, the creator, they give our finite minds the actual attributes we need to fill in that mental reality. And there's this really fascinating mathematical detail here. In classical lists, like the famous one from the scholar Tirmidhi, we usually hear about the 99 names. But the source points out that there are actually 99 attributes, plus one absolute proper name, Allah, which acts as the anchor that all those other attributes describe. So if you look at the complete mathematical framework of this conceptual ladder, it's actually exactly 100. Section 3. Diamonds and attributes. So if we have this ladder, how do we actually use it to seek understanding? Well, the source warns against a huge logical trap, seeking from the infinite, which is a top-down approach. Starting our questioning from the infinite, totally incomprehensible essence of God is, frankly, like trying to do a PhD before you've even gone to kindergarten. It's just way beyond our capacity. Instead, the correct path is bottoms up. We have to start from the finite. We look at the observable chains of cause and effect right in front of us in the physical world, and we follow them upward. To explain this bottom-up path, the text uses one of the most striking metaphors I've ever seen, the physical transformation of carbon. Think about it. You start with basic carbon or ash. If you put it under light pressure, it turns into a lump of coal. But if you subject it to intense, immense, absolutely crushing pressure, it becomes a tiny yet infinitely valuable diamond. Immense pressure literally creates immense value. And here's how that connects right back to us. Worldly pressure and immense hardship are exactly what transform an ordinary soul into a diamond. The source points to historical figures who went through monumental suffering, like Bilal or the prophet Ayub, also known as Job. It was precisely the crushing pressure of their trials that forged them into spiritual diamonds. So when you're faced with hardship, it totally shifts your perspective. Instead of just complaining about the pressure, you realize you're actually being forged into something of incredible value.
Section 4. The train of free will. Now we're pivoting into what is, for sure, one of the most complex philosophical dilemmas ever. Human choice versus divine destiny. Like, how can we possibly have free will if an all-knowing divine force is already completely in control? The text tackles this by separating will into two distinct buckets. Kuzi irade is human will. It's restricted, it's individual, and it's localized to you. Then there's kuli irade, divine will, which is absolute, overarching, and universal. And the argument here is that these two don't cancel each other out at all. Your human will actually operates concurrently right inside the divine will.
To visualize this, the source gives us this absolutely brilliant train analogy. Okay, imagine you're on a moving train. Step 1, you have complete freedom to stand up, walk between the cars, go forward, walk backward. That's your human will. You are entirely free within that specific space. But step 2, the train itself is traveling along its predetermined tracks toward a very specific destination. That is the divine will. So your personal choices are operating completely freely, but they're doing so within the larger, unstoppable trajectory of divine destiny. But here's the catch. Having that free will inside the train requires you to actually do something. The source sums this dynamic up with a really powerful phrase, wish so that I may wish. The whole idea is that God waits for us to actively use our restricted will. If you're just sitting passively in your seat, staring at a closed door and expecting it to magically swing open for you, well, you're rejecting the gift of your own agency. You have to actually reach out and turn the handle. You must use your human will in order for the divine will to open the path.
Section 5. Doing good. Okay, so we've covered existence, perception, and free will. Now let's transition to how we actually apply all this to the real world. The source draws a really sharp line between two types of goodness. First is Hespi, goodness, which is totally unconditional. It's doing good simply because it's the right thing to do. On the flip side is Hesabi goodness. This is conditional, calculated goodness. It's when you do a favor, but it's based on calculating who the recipient is, what their status is, or, let's be honest, what you might get in return.
The text calls out some massive moral flaws with this conditional, calculated goodness. Think about it. If your goodness requires a grateful, aware recipient who can pay you back, your morality completely falls apart in a lot of real-world situations. It fails when you interact with animals, because they can't thank you. It fails when you're helping someone who's unconscious or severely ill. And it absolutely fails when you're dealing with someone who has wronged you. The source argues that true virtue simply cannot require a transactional payback. Furthermore, the way we act dictates the very environment we live in. The source makes this point that every single evil act is essentially an advertisement for evil. It just pumps more negativity into circulation. But on the other hand, every good act, especially showing unconditional goodness towards someone who might have even harmed us, is a propagation of goodness. It actively injects virtue right back into this spiritual ecosystem. So I want to leave you with a highly provocative question to chew on straight from this philosophy. Take a second and look at your own ethical motivations. Are you doing good because it's calculated, because it benefits you, or because you expect to thank you? Or are you doing good unconditionally, simply because it is intrinsically good? Keep pondering your own skills of measurement, and thank you so much for joining us on this explainer today.